works at Parity, is maintainer for Multigeth as well, and has contributed on core development and ECIP discussion on Classic as well. So delighted to have you here. Thank you. Also, one other thing is that Wei is the author of EIP 1702, which is the versioning of the blockchain, versioning of the EVM. I'm afraid, my excuse. So there is, a controversial piece within Istanbul right now, where gas prices are being changed in a non-backwards compatible manner, which is breaking existing deployed contracts on Aragon. So there would be a fairly simple fix to that by introducing versioning. It doesn't look like that's going to happen on Eth. Maybe we can help persuade that still to happen, possibly, even at this late stage. But I certainly think that on the ETC side, that is a feature that we would need prior to bringing such changes in. So, Wei has been banging the drum on backwards compatibility and immutability. So
I will be talking more about conversioning in DevCon. If you want to hear more about it, just ask me right now after the talk or at DevCon are fun. So this talk is about, another topic is about merging blockchains. Before, it's potentially quite controversial because we're potentially talking about merging chains like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. But before we talk about that, just a short introduction of me. I'm a co-developer at Party Technologies, and I work on Ethereum Classic, and also Polkadot substrate. And I'm also the current maintainer of the Multigeth project. And we're actively looking for more maintainers. So if you're a developer and if you're interested in Go, talk to me. So we're talking about merging blockchains. Why do we want to merge blockchains? I think all of you are already familiar with the 51% attack that happened on Ethereum Classic back this year. So there are some proposed fix, but I think none of them will work because we are just a proof of work blockchain. The issue is that the only thing that matters is just work, just hash rate. If you don't have enough hash rate, then you are going to get attacked. That's a really bad thing. Another issue we're talking about here is about testing. So I think some of you may have familiar with this. So testnet is quite hard to maintain. The issue is that if we want to maintain a purely proof of work testnet, it needs hash rate, it needs nodes. And those things are not easy to come by for proof of work because it just requires money to run proof of work. And there's also seldom incentive to support them. Just as I said, it's not real money. So, and also, it's also not quite something that everyone needs because for DF developers, if they want to test their own features, they can just run their own private testnet, which kind of makes the public testnet also harder to run. And if you are on either Ethereum hard fork or Ethereum Classic hard fork, you all know this discussion that is always going, whether we should spin up a new testnet for the next hard fork or just continue to use the existing testnet. And this is not, nearly never ending. We can avoid this problem by running a proof of authority testnet, but it's not always perfect because if we want to test something if we want to test the difficulty adjustment algorithm change, or if we want to test the proof of work algorithm change, then we must run a proof of work testnet. There's also the interoperability issue. The thing is separately blockchains almost never work together. We now have peace bridge, but it is still the case that blockchains like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic hardly communicate with each other. So that's an issue. And it's also about the community. So we all know community can split, and when split, if it's on a blockchain, we get a permanent split of the blockchain, like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. The issue is community can unite again. Like we can, maybe one day the issue will forever be resolved, and the Ethereum and Ethereum Classic will work closer together. But currently we don't have any solutions for blockchain to reunite. If even the communities reunite, we still have two separate blockchains and they still work separately. So that is one why here we are talking about merging blockchains. So here we are talking about shared proof of work security, so that we can better prevent against 51% attack, because we just simply have higher hash rate. And we want to enable optional interoperability if those merged blockchain wants that. Also to unite communities after split. So the first method I'm going to talk about is the EIP 2225, which is basically, the basic idea is really simple. So we try to keep existing Ethereum data structures as much as possible, just not to change it. And given this constraint, how do we merge two Ethereum-based blockchains, just such as Ethereum and Ethereum Classic? So the idea is quite simple. We just merge the state roots. So what is a state root? So Ethereum state is stored in what is called a modified Markov-Patricia tree. So we have a really giant key-value database. And this key-value database is basically a mapping from address to the actual account state, which is nonce, balance, and the start value and its code. So what we basically do underlying is we just hash those values and hash them again until we get one single hash in the top, which we call the state root. And the state root is always unique for any given state. So we have this state root for one Ethereum blockchain. Now we just simply have two state roots. So what do? We just combine those two state roots together, just hash it again. And this is also known as a binary Markov tree. It's basically a binary Markov tree that just had two items in the list. And for the rest of the blockchain, what we are going to do is we keep one blockchain's proof of work and discard the other one. So the other chain, after the merge block, the other chain's miner is expected to migrate to the main chain. So we call the chain where the proof of work is kept the merger blockchain, and the other blockchain the mergee blockchain. So now we have the state combined. But what about the state root execution? So for state root execution, we use account versioning. So after merge, the account versioning, the basic idea of account versioning is quite simple. So we just associate each account as in the giant K-value database with a version. And when an account is executing, that means it has some code associated with it. Then what we do is we read the version information and then span the VM of this version to execute the code. So for merging, for EIP 2225, after two blockchains are merged, we basically just define two versions, two account versions. And we make one side of the state always have one version, and the other side of the state, the merger blockchain always have one version, the merge blockchain has another version. So in that case, the merger blockchain can always use the original, whatever original version that execution rule that the merger blockchain has to execute its accounts, its contracts, and the same for the merge blockchain. So this is the basic concept. Now the final thing we need to figure out is how do we actually merge this thing as a hard fork block. So as a hard fork block, the hard fork block is basically a merger blockchain's block. We have something as a merge blockchain, but the hard fork block will be a merger chain block. And it has no transactions, just because it will complicate things. So the merge say root, we write it on the actual data field. That is a data field that is can be whatever. So we just make a rule that as a hard fork block, this actual data field must be the say root of the merge say root. And no need to fully validate that. And also, as actual validation, we have a block, corresponding block as a merge blockchain. So this should also have a block. And for that block, the actual data field should also be the corresponding hard fork block as a merger blockchain. That is what happens as a hard fork block. Now we basically have under 2225, we have two blockchains merged. They now share the same proof of work, but how do they communicate? So basically, we just define additional opcodes just for the interoperability, because now the client can exactly pin at every point what is the state root for the merger blockchain, the merge blockchain. So the state execution become deterministic and really simple. So we just define additional opcodes similar to call, but it crosses the boundary of the merge and merger blockchain. And for UI side, we just said add a unique prefix for whatever the merger and merge blockchain is. So for this setup, we have minimum modification for Ethereum data structures. And also both chains share the same proof of work. So again, they protect against 51% attack better because we just have better hash rate. And both chains execute under its own execution rules. And interoperability can be enabled if any chain wants it. So that's 2225, but they are not perfect. So the issue is we only merge two blockchains. What if we want to merge more? Like if we have three blockchains or even more, how do we merge them? The issue is also it only works for Ethereum-based blockchains. So how do we make this work for non-Ethereum blockchains? If we want to merge like Bitcoin and Ethereum together, how do we do that? I mean, there was a solution for how to merge blockchain that is called merge mining. The issue for merge mining that is require a lot of modification. For the chain that has lower hash rate, that is usually called the auxiliary chain, and it also only really supports merging two chains together. So can we do better than merge mining? So this comes to the idea of set bit. So this is basically a minimum construct of a blockchain. This blockchain, we call it a master blockchain, that allows security sharing of proof of work and possibly other interoperability things. So we have master blockchain. Master blockchain is basically this minimum construct that all miners run on. And we have participating blockchains. One master blockchain can have multiple participating blockchains. This number can be big or small depending on how many blockchains we want to merge. So the master blockchain basically stores arbitrary data. So it has no state execution rules. That means we always have data that to be the fixed length of hash. This is basically defined just a unique value of the hash. And all of them are actually expected to be the participating blockchain's block prehash. Prehash is basically the hash you get from a block before you're generating the proof of work cell. And we less encoded those prehash into a binary Markov tree. This is the definition of master blockchain's header. Basically, you can say it just contains the parent block hash, and this data set and data root basically just forms a list, a binary Markov tree, which inside it is a list, and also a proof of work cell. And for participating blockchain, it only needs the integration of the cell. So, like, if we fork, if a blockchain wants to become a set-bin participating blockchain, the only thing you need to change is just the cell. So, the first item skipped is basically the blocks that we skipped since last master blockchain header we have. And the second is the current master blockchain header. And we also, this index and proof basically gives a proof that this block, like this prehash, is in the master blockchain given above. So this construct requires no interaction with the master blockchain for block validation. So that means it can freely decide to join or leave a master blockchain at any time, and we don't need to modify the networking layer, which is much better. I mean, it's much simpler to adopt the existing blockchain into set-bin. So if we just want to have basic integration, what we can do is we just use the same, like participating blockchains are always expected to use the same proof of work algorithm. And for basic integration, we just have the same block time and same difficulty adjustment algorithms. But because we can have multiple master blockchains for different situations, so you can choose your algorithm as long as the other blockchain you want to merge has the same thing. And there are situations because we are basically just storing arbitrary data in the master blockchain. So maybe miners are not mining all the participating blockchains. In that case, some blocks in the master blockchain may not have all the participating blockchain. In that case, it will just result in a longer block time for some lower hash rate participating blockchain. But in that case, the security is not compromised. You still have the overall, the total hash rate of the whole master blockchain to secure the block. For advanced integration, so we can, the participating blockchain can choose to commit to master blockchain, once for n blocks, thus result in shorter block times. But it's definitely more complex, and we need to support multiple cell types. So this is basically set-bin. So basically, we allow merging any number of blockchains, thus sharing security for proof of work. And this is basically a really minimal modification for to any blockchain format. We only need to modify the cell. And if we want to do interoperability, that is also possible, but it will require some additional information from the master blockchain, but it's possible. So just a small note on immutability. So now the blockchains are merged, either under 2225 or under SetBin. So what about immutability? So this is just to say that even if we merge two blockchains, and the two blockchain has different concept of what it means about immutability, for example, Ethereum Classic, we still can live together. So the thing is, each chain can continue to have their own definition of immutability and can carry out hard fork at their schedule. So it really doesn't matter. It always execute under their own execution rules. So immutability is not compromised. So for this talk, we talk about 51% attack and why this is an issue, and also why testnet, proof of work testnet are hard to run. Also why blockchains interoperability, and also can be split. And we talk about two different solutions that can solve this problem by merging blockchains. The first is 2225, which provide a solution for a minimum modification into existing Ethereum data structures and merge two Ethereum blockchains. And also SetBin, which is a generalized minimal construct that has a master blockchain, participating blockchain structure that allows merging any number of blockchains together. And that's it. And you can find the link for 2225 or SetBin here. And any questions, or I think I'm running out of time. So
yeah, I'm afraid we don't have time for any questions right now. But obviously, you know, Wei's here. Go and ask him questions at any point. Thank you. Oh.